Exploring History of Marginalization, Indigenous People in Canada. Hello, my name is Ashley Snyder, and this presentation is about the history and ongoing effects of marginalization on Indigenous people in Canada, specifically the Algonquin community. For this presentation, I watched the documentary The Invisible Nation. The documentary opened my eyes to how deeply the Algonquin people have been harmed by colonization and neglect. In this presentation, I will share what I learned, reflect on my own thinking, and talk about what this means for us as future social workers. The Invisible Nation tells a story of the Algonquin people in Quebec. They've been pushed off their land and denied basic rights and ignored by the government. The documentary shows how their land has been used for logging and development without permission, while their communities still don't have clean water or proper housing. What stood out most was how invisible their pain has been to the rest of Canada. The film made it clear that this isn't just history, it's happening now. Before watching the documentary, I didn't know much about the Algonquin people. I assumed that things in Canada were getting better for Indigenous communities, but I realized that that's a very surface level view. This made me think about how many of us grow up without learning the full truth and how easy it is to believe that justice is being done when it's not. It reminded me how important it is to question what we think we know and stay open to learning. As social workers, we're going to work with people who carry the weight of this kind of history. If we don't know about residential schools, the 60s scoops, and how families were torn apart, we risk causing more harm, even when we mean well. Some people may not trust us right away, and that's valid. We need to earn the trust by being respectful, informed, and honest. We also need to be aware of our own biases and make sure we're not repeating patterns of ignoring or minimizing people's pain. Here are 10 important moments in the history of Indigenous marginalization in Canada. In 1876, the Indian Act gave the government control over many parts of Indigenous life. In 1892, laws made it mandatory for Indigenous children to go to residential schools. In 1922, racist immigration laws reflected how Canada excluded non-white communities. In 1951, changes allowed provinces to step in and remove Indigenous children from their homes. During the 1960s, the 60s scoop took thousands of children from their families and placed them in white households. In 1982, the Constitution Act recognized Indigenous treaty rights. In the 1990s, the last residential schools were finally closed. In 2015, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission called the residential school systems cultural genocide. In 2019, more schools and programs started focusing on decolonizing education. Today, social work programs are slowly beginning to include Indigenous teachings and healing practices. The damage from residential schools in the 60s scoops didn't end when those systems shut down. Generations of families were affected. Many lost their language, their culture, and their sense of identity. This kind of trauma doesn't just go away, it gets passed out. And even today, many Indigenous people deal with poverty, health problems, and discrimination that comes from these long histories of harm. This isn't just a story about pain. There's also so much strength and resilience in Indigenous communities. People are bringing back traditional ceremonies, teaching their languages, and finding ways to heal together. Some social work programs are now combining Indigenous ways of healing, like ceremonial and community storytelling, with modern therapy. It shows how powerful it can be when we listen and learn from Indigenous voices. We can't ignore this history or pretend it's not a part of the work we do. To be good social workers, we have to show up with respect, listen more than we talk, and let communities lead. We need to be aware of our own blind spots and take time to learn. Decolonizing our practice means letting go of the idea that we know best. It means being open to different ways of healing and being human. Marginalization of Indigenous people didn't stop in the past. It continues in different ways today. As social workers, we have the chance and the responsibility to be a part of change. That means speaking up, being present, and always growing in our understanding. We don't need to be perfect, but we need to be real, respectful, and commit to justice. Here are some of the references that I used for this presentation. Thank you for listening, and I appreciate the chance to reflect on this topic and share what I've learned.